Warm welcome to everybody who has got gathered here to attend this seminar on 2025 recapped the state of global politics. It is my pleasure to welcome three distinguished speakers, and I will talk about them later when they take the floor. I'd like to begin by saying that the year 2025 was full of conflicts. The worst conflict was in Gaza, where there was a regular genocide and where an artificial humanitarian crisis was created by the Israelis. The genocide in Gaza really overshadowed all other conflicts in 2025. But there was fighting in other parts of the world also, in the Sudan, where 12 million Sudanese left their country and the country was ravaged by hunger. There was the Ukraine war. There were the strikes on Iran by the United States and Israel. And Haiti, where criminal gangs rule the country. They have the country in their grip. Was also the crisis leading up to Maduro's arrest, the president of Venezuela. He was kidnapped, you can say he was kidnapped, or he was arrested and shifted to the United States. There was also the civil war in Myanmar, and there was some kind of thaw in the relationship between China and the United States. There was also the continuing concern of America and the European Union about North Korea's nuclear stand and its missile programs. But as I said, the Gaza genocide overshadowed all conflicts. But some good things also happened. And they were mainly centered around the humanitarian work done by the United Nations. As you know, there are United Nations peacekeepers in various countries of the world, mainly stationed in Africa. The top contributors to the UN peacekeeping forces are Nepal, Bangladesh, Rwanda, and India. But Pakistan also contributes to the peacekeeping. The funders of the peacekeeping are the United States, China, Japan, and Germany. What order would you like to speak in? So the first person I would like to call to the floor is Dr. Akbar Zaidi. He is one of Pakistan's leading economists. He has written many books on Pakistan's economy. He is the executive director of the Institute of Business Administration. And he will speak on global economy and the stream. Dr. Akbar Zaidi.
Thank you very much, Masuma. Thank you for the invitation. It is not even 1 year. It's actually 362 days only. And we're living in the era of Trump. We're living in the aura of Trump as well. I think I'm going to explain these 2 points. And 2025 has not ended. It is not going to end as long as Trump is in power. The world is being decided, the world economy, geopolitics, morality is being decided by one individual. And I think the word which describes Trump and his action is audacious. Um, I was just counting. I've been around for 7 decades, and I don't remember anyone as audacious and as provocative at such an important position as Donald Trump. In social science and business studies, we increasingly talk about a theme called disruption, whether it's disruption in terms of innovation, entrepreneurship, the disruption in terms of how things are organized. But I think there are very few moments, call them very long moments in historical time, which are as disruptive as 2025. We've been, Masuma has said we're talking about 2025 recapped. I think 2025 is still going on. In every sense of the word, I said economy, geopolitics, morality, but I think importantly, 2 actions under the current president of the United States, who has still to complete 1 year, have shown the military might and the precision of the military might of the United States, which we have not seen for many decades. There have been many attempts by the United States to intervene, to change governments, but 2 things they did in a matter of the last 7 months show the precision and the science and the military science of the United States Army, which is the commander-in-chief being Donald Trump. You can see what that means. One was Iran, the attacks, the planes which flew from the middle of the United States non-stop, which came and bombed where the nuclear facilities were supposed to be. We don't know what damage has been done, but I think apparently from whatever clips and sounds and assessment we've seen, that it seems that Iran's program and a lot else as well, as we can see over the last few days, has been damaged, addressed, taken care of, whatever words you want to use, by Donald Trump. And the one which happened, I think last week, or is it 2 weeks ago, where Maduro was kidnapped. And there's no other word for it. Masuma is absolutely right. It was a raid and it was not an invasion. I think that's something else that we need to think about. In 2003, Iraq was invaded, Libya was invaded, the entire Middle East, parts of it were invaded by the United States. And not talking about what Israel did and others as well. But this time, I think having learned from the adventurism of 2003 onwards in Iraq and Libya, which are in a complete mess, there was a raid, there was not an invasion. There was a kidnapping of a president, and there was no, not an invasion. Trump's government, the United States government, has also now very clearly shown that they are what's being termed in the literature as a muscular government. And this is not just internationally, but regionally, locally, the way ICE has been working and other places as well within the United States. It's a muscular government that clearly shows what it does. Others who've been thinking about and writing about this moment, especially not so much Iran. I think Iran, because it got caught up with Israel in the Gaza war, is a slightly different thing. That's been a sense of a quote-unquote a problem for much of the so-called West, and especially the United States, for many decades now, at least 4 decades, 5 decades now. But it was Venezuela, I think, which brought about this term of which a number of people who've been writing about it and thinking about it, we call it a lurch to the past, and a new imperialism, an imperialism of resource imperialism. It's interesting to see that unlike Iraq, unlike Libya, unlike other places where the mantra was democracy, regime change, in Venezuela it's nothing of the sort. It's we want oil, and as Trump has said, I now run Venezuela. These are his words, and we're going to get 30 million barrels of oil. I don't think he really knows, and I think a lot of oil companies have also said that that's not possible given the state of oil exploration and whatever it's called drilling in Venezuela and the poor quality of infrastructure. But anyway, that's besides the point. So it's all about oil. It's not about any sense of democracy or values. It's about power and natural resources. It's also important to state that this is also part of what was called the Monroe Doctrine, which is being redefined differently now. And the National Security Strategy of November 2025 under Trump says that the US, and I quote, the United States cannot allow, that's the important word, any nation to become so dominant that it could threaten our interests. And it's the Western Hemisphere, which is now defined as including Greenland, Cuba, Mexico, and Colombia, and every other part of the world. So the definition of the Western Hemisphere, which was part of the Monroe Doctrine a century ago, has been redefined completely. So that is where we are in terms of how the world has been run, how the geopolitics starting on the 20th of January 2025 has continued. And it's my sense and understanding that this is going to continue as long as Trump is in power, whether that's 4 years or whether it's some illness or whether or some other event, that this is the pattern that's going to continue. I can also make a prediction which is often wrong, but my predictions are often wrong, but I will go ahead anyway, that once Trump goes, the whole structure of geopolitics, aggression, muscular government, resource imperialism will change. Neither Rubio nor J.D. Vance have the charisma, the gravitas, the knowledge, the whatever you want to call it, which Trump has. Trump has been around. This is his second term. He knows a lot about running a country in his own way. And I don't think that those who will replace him, if it is the Republicans, will continue with this. So it's also important to know that I think the intervention that has been made since last year, since 20th January 2025 onwards, it may end when Trump steps down or after his 4-year term. You'll notice that while I've been talking about the geopolitics and the economy, which I'll come to in a little while, I haven't mentioned the C word, China. It's interesting that a lot, I'll read that again, the National Security Strategy of November 2025. The US cannot allow any nation to become so dominant that it could threaten our interests. The one nation which threatens the so-called interests of the United States is China. And interestingly, I don't know if many people know this, but Venezuela is the biggest recipient of official Chinese loans and governments in Latin America in the last 22 years. So they received $106 billion from the Chinese government. And so they are particularly important to China. So if the one dominant country which threatens the interests of the United States is China, that is going to define how the geopolitics of the region, of the world is going to take place, something that we are not surprised at because that is much of what has been happening. So in some ways, China has failed in its area of influence, its extended influence in some ways. I say some ways because I'll come back to the economic consequences of what Trump did in 2025. But it's failed in some ways because much of Venezuela's oil went to Iran, went to China, and went to Cuba. Much of Mexico's oil went to Cuba as well. So we can see that much of that is going to stop, and the consequences are going to, as Trump said, and I quote, Cuba is ready to fold. So I think that's very likely that's going to happen. So we can expect that. He said a few other things, which I'll also repeat, which will show you how colorful his language has been. I think something we are familiar with. So China has, in some ways, been marginalized in a sphere where they were gaining a lot of support. Chinese investments in Latin America are very, very significant in Brazil. And there are 3 countries in Latin America which have actually gone against what has happened and made statements against the Venezuela raid and the kidnapping. One of them is Lula's Brazil, the other is Colombia, and the third is Mexico. The others have said that this is a very good thing. and they have encouraged Trump to make sure that Latin America is cleaned of other despots, so-called despots like Maduro. But China has been marginalized in all this, and I think that is going to be a consequence, and the consequences of that are going to become more evident in 2026. However, it's also the China which has shown that it's one country which has been able to deal with President Trump in 2025. When Trump raised his tariffs globally without distinction, and his main target was not the EU, not some small island in the, I think, the Pacific, which was also against which he also had tariffs, but it was China. But the greatest beneficiary of Trump's economics and geopolitics has actually been China. China's trade surplus, just a surplus, not the amount of exports that they made. Last year, 2025, was $1.2 trillion. Our economy, Pakistan's economy, and we're supposed to be the fifth largest country, is about 350 billion. So their trade surplus was 4 times what Pakistan's GDP is. That'll give you a sense. And originally, in the beginning, when Trump said that one of his biggest targets is China, China said, okay, all our rare earth minerals and material is not going to be supplied to the United States. So he had to backtrack. And as you've seen in 2025, Trump has backtracked on numerous occasions whenever it's come to trade and tariffs. His main idea was to have tariffs. So what does that mean for what lies ahead? I think one thing is very clear. We talk a lot about uncertainty and things like that, but I think we've entered what one theorist has called radical uncertainty. Because we don't know whether it's going to be Greenland, which is next, whether it's going to be Cuba, Mexico. About Canada, Trump said, why don't you just join our country? As if countries would want to do that. And about Greenland, he says, we do need Greenland, absolutely, in Trump's speak. About Colombia, a country which is next to Venezuela, and which has now housed, I think, 3 million Venezuelans who flew from Chavez and then Maduro. He said about President Gustavo Petro, he has to watch his ass. So this is the geopolitics of the 21st century, the second quarter of the 21st century. It is indeed very, very difficult to talk about what's going to happen next in terms of economic trade, economic development, and indeed geopolitics. I think there are people who used to predict when there was a bit of certainty, when there was a bit of stability, and all of them are saying that it's absolutely impossible to think about what's happening. And looking at Trump's record in the first year, you can see that while he's made threats, for example, the threat to bomb Iran last week, and then he said because the Ayatollah has decided not to, that executions are going to be stopped and nobody's going to be killed, I've decided not to attack, and it's my own decision. If decisions at a geopolitical level, at a diplomatic level, are taken in that way, I think we should be prepared for much more adventurism. The kidnap of Maduro is just going to be a very small episode. The attack on Iran is going to be a small page in history. Much more is to be expected. What do countries like Pakistan and others do who can't decide whether they support Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates in a war in which they take place, or they're not allowed to talk about it? Who can't decide whether what they say about Iran, because that's a country which some countries don't like and some countries are neighbors to and they keep quiet about it. What do they say about Yemen, where the Houthis are supported by one group and others in Yemen are supported by the others? Countries like Pakistan don't have a voice anymore, which is very unfortunate because there was a time, and despite the Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, Qatar, I don't know how many other countries are going to join some sort of grouping that's being made, and so-called alternate to NATO, but I'm not sure where that lies in terms of conflict between countries which are part of that arrangement. There's going to be a great problem. So Pakistan's geopolitics, its economics, is linked very closely to Saudi Arabia more than the United UAE. There was a time about 20 years ago when most of Pakistani skilled workers went to the UAE. Now they go to Saudi Arabia. Last year, the official numbers are about 800,000, which I think are greatly underrepresented and underreported. The numbers are 550,000, 5.5 lakh went to Saudi Arabia, far fewer to UAE, some went to Kuwait, some went to other countries, some went to Qatar. But 500,000 Pakistanis going to Saudi Arabia means that that's where our money is coming from. So we have to be very careful of how we maneuver that. On the one hand, Pakistan is trying to work with China over the so-called CPEC program, which is now completely redundant. On the other hand, it is also like other countries who want to be in the good books of the United States, and particularly President Trump, just 2 days ago signed an agreement with the Trump family over bitcoins and cyber coins and crypto coins and things of that nature. And a few months ago in May, I think, or June, when our field marshal visited, the favorite field marshal of Donald Trump visited Washington, decided to give a sample of rare earths, which are supposed to be found in a province where even the locals can't go, leave alone anybody else. I'm not sure how this economic project is going to take place. I hear that there's a lot of infrastructure and development taking there, but one has been hearing that for the last 45 years, but nothing has really come to that. So this region, we don't talk to two of our neighbors. One neighbor we can't talk to because we don't know whether we're on their side or Saudi Arabia's side. With India, after the skirmish and the intervention by Modi, I think it's improbable that Pakistan and India's relations are going to work. It's exactly the same with the Taliban in Afghanistan. So we are squeezed. We are in a region where we have no neighbors, or we have neighbors, we don't talk to them. And that's why we reach up across neighbors and try to talk to countries like Saudi Arabia, mainly asking them to open up their development where our skilled and unskilled workers can go. So as I said, it's impossible to make predictions and probably extremely unwise at this stage to say that when there's such great uncertainty to make predictions. But I think one thing is clear, Trump's presence is going to determine much that happens at a global level. And it also in some ways gives legitimacy to Putin's advance on Ukraine. If you can go and invade and kidnap the president of one country and invade Iraq and Libya, then you can't complain. You don't have the moral authority to complain that Russia is eating up Ukraine or China is going to take over Taiwan. So by doing something of this nature, and especially if Greenland is taken, which is, I don't like making predictions, but I'm sure it's not going to be taken. I think it's going to be the most astonishing, audacious, astonishing event in our lives that we can see if Donald Trump tries to take over Greenland the way he has promised to, with Denmark and NATO all coming undone. So I'll just leave it there. I know it's a cliche to say that we live in interesting times, but sometimes times are so interesting that it's best that we had some sense of stability, some sense of sensibility, and some sense of a little less uncertainty. So welcome to extreme uncertainty and radical uncertainty. And if you have any idea of how the world is going to change, please do let me know. I'm waiting to find out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar Zaidi. Well, we have to live with the reality that Trump is a very great presence on the global stage. He is also a very colorful presence. His language and the way he talks and the way he threatens also is something which is so undiplomatic, and I don't think we have seen it in the recent past from any country. I was driving by the Consul General of Qatar, so we will have to live to see what he is going to do. He wants regime changes in so many countries. His latest victim is Cuba. He wants to change the regime in Cuba. The Cubans have, of course, made a very bold statement about their sovereignty, but one doesn't know how long they can stand out. About Iran, though, and Pakistan, I would like to say that Pakistan has taken a stand on Iran. If you listen to the speech of our ambassador at the UN, It was a very pro-Iran speech. Full of references to our common heritage. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Kaiser Bengali. He is a very eminent economist. In fact, he has been called the people's economist in Pakistan. The former advisor to the Chief Minister of Sindh for Planning and Development and head of the Chief Minister's Policy Reform Unit, Government of Balochistan. He is very well informed about the economic situation in both these provinces. He will speak on uprising of the Gen Z and its impact. Dr. Kaiser Bengali.
Thank you, Dr. Masuma. Thank you, Dr. Masuma, for inviting me here. Before I come to the subject of the Generation Z, let's talk about the world. Akbar has very rightly described the present scenario, what is starting with 2025. And I think I would agree, most of us would agree that the turbulence that has been created is not likely to go away. This is because the apple carts that Trump is upsetting is not going to settle down once he leaves. It's not just his departure of his personality, but what is happening in the world also will carry on. I want to talk about why this has happened and how this has happened. We are aware of what has happened. In my view, we are paying the wages of neoliberalism that became the dominant politico-economic philosophy since the 1980s. It started much before, but the 80s it began to really impress upon the whole world. Neoliberalism said that merit should count, efficiency should count. Industries that are not efficient should have no right to exist. Regions of a country or that are not part of the global economy have no right. They can take care of themselves and so on and so forth. So we've seen Brexit was a direct result of the impact of neoliberalism. There were parts of UK which UK is an island with a string of fish harbors, and most of them, the whole town died out because of the being part of EU and the agreements that were made and the fishing controls that came in. London prospered tremendously because of the financial economy, and finance was the driver of world progress. So London progressed, and we know that London voted against leaving EU. The north, east, north, all these outlying areas which became marginalized because of the efficiency model of neoliberalism, they died out and they voted against. Trump's, the rise of the far right in Europe is also a result of that, because it is when jobs are taken away, when there are large sections of the population, areas of a country which die out, then they look for scapegoats. And immigrants are a scapegoat in country after country, and it's the same in the United States. There were states where coal mining or steel was the dominant employer. When it died out, these are the states that voted for Trump. So, my view, this is about half a century of neoliberalism created this, and now what do we have? a complete, as far as Trump is concerned, as far as the United States is concerned, a rejection of all this. They are buying stakes in companies forcibly. In a way, partial nationalization has taken place in the US in several companies. World trade, WTO doesn't exist as far as US and Trump is concerned. They will impose tariffs, whether it is allowed or not. They will just take care of themselves. And this, the unique thing is that not only international agreements arrived at, like WTO, are no longer to be respected, international law is not to be respected. And Trump very clearly said, I don't care about international law, I'll go by my own morality. And so we see that. And of course, the actions that he has taken, around the world, highlighted in Venezuela. You just go there, pick up the president and go away. And as Akbar said, that it's not about regime change because the regime is still there. The civil and military leadership that was loyal to Maduro is still there, and they are still talking by giving space to Maduro in the name of Maduro, even the current acting president. The lawlessness, more than Trump's lawlessness or the United States lawlessness, is the lawlessness of Israel with respect to Palestine and Gaza. If their drones identify one individual in a crowd of 100 people, they will kill all 100. And they've done it. They have razed building after building, hospitals, they've killed children, women. And Gaza's genocide has not ended. It is still going on. They will not allow medicines to come through. They will not allow tents to come in, even though it is raining and it's very cold. So the effort. And the United States, of course, supports it, gives state police support. But the rest of the world is also supporting it. The rest of the Arab world is also supporting it. In a way, one has to question whether the sheikhdoms of the Middle East, they are also on the same page with Israel. They don't want a Palestine state because it's going to be a progressive state, and that a Palestine state will be a threat to the monarchies of the Gulf states. They seem to be on the same page with Israel, that this population has to be dispersed all over the world so there is no Palestine, because they have not really taken any action to protect the Palestinians, either in Gaza or in the West Bank. Globalization, incidentally, was promoted by the West, and most of the WTO law was written by the United States. But then it was convenient for them because they were the dominant power in the world, and globalization codified that dominant power. But when an alternative power has arisen, which is China, globalization is no longer convenient. So it has to be thrown out of the window, which is what Trump and the United States is doing. I don't see Trump as omnipotent. I think Trump's international adventurism is a direct result of his string of domestic failures. His entire tariff policy is in tatters. As rightly Akbar said, the whole tariff agenda was aimed at China, and he's had to roll back all the way. China just forced Trump to go on his knees. His other measures inside the country are facing challenges from the law courts. He's been blocked. The threat of losing the Congress in November 2026 is, according to American media reports, CNN and others, is that they're probably going to lose. So, having lost the domestic agenda, he is now turned into the foreign adventurism, and he's not the first president to do it. When Clinton was faced with the Monica Lewinsky crisis, he bombed Afghanistan. Not because Afghanistan had done anything, but because some Islamic radicals had bombed an American naval ship in Yemen. But he wanted to flex his muscles, show the Americans, look here, what a great president I am. And I think this is exactly what Trump is doing. Trump is not just an individual. I think Trump has a constituency behind him that supports him. So, yes, Trump, post-Trump, if there is Rubio or Vance, they will not have the style of governance of Trump. But I think the agenda, the right-wing agenda, the extreme right-wing agenda that has been set up will not go away. It will be there. The style will be different. The muscularness will not be there, but it will be there. It will not go away. It's not that the United States is going to return to the fold of respecting either national or international law. It's not going to happen. Right? And Pakistan, of course, and very rightly, I think that there can't be two opinions about it. We are caught in a, in between several contradictions. We can't go with China because we are so indebted to IMF and the World Bank, which are American institutions. We can't go with Saudi Arabia because so much is in the UAE. We can't go with UAE. We can't trade with Iran because then the sanctions will apply, but we can't go against Iran. We will continue to, shuttle between one side to another. Whichever side we go, will be slapped to back. But this is a situation we have reduced ourselves to. There is a lot of noise about. I mean, right now, Pakistan is entering the arms export market and the Middle East. Libya and Saudi Arabia and others. Saudi Arabia has also wants our J-35 planes or whatever. I'm very amused by it because these planes are all composed of perhaps 100%, if not maybe 95%, 100% Chinese parts. So we import Chinese parts, assemble them and export them as Pakistani fighter jets. And we think we are now dominating the arms market in the Middle East. That's the kind of language that is coming out from our rulers. But I think Pakistan is in a very weak and dangerous position. We have no allies, we have no neighbors, we rightly said. We have no allies anywhere. Even China will be lukewarm to supporting us because there is only up to a point they will support us, and that's how they have been doing. And on the subject that I was supposed to speak on, Gen Z, I think this is overrated totally. हमें मफरूज़ों का बड़ा शौक है इस मुल्क में, हर चीज़ मफरूज़े बन जाते हैं. Every generation is different from the previous generation. And every previous generation has contributed something. To say that this is the generation which is really going to change the world. No, the world has been changing. When fire was discovered, when the wheel was discovered, these were all earth-shaking events which changed the world. Internet also changed the world as it came. Whatever developments is taking place on that front now will of course change it. We are, in the last 30 years, we are witness to the rapid changes that are taking place in our own lifetime. There is technology that has come which we've had to learn. The Gen Z revolts that have been taking place, they have not delivered anything. The The spring revolutions that came, they did not deliver anything. Ultimately, the status quo came back with different faces and different names maybe. In Bangladesh, nothing will change. It is not that. The same elite is going to run the country. The only change that has happened is Sri Lanka, where a leftist party has come into power. But I don't know, I don't follow Sri Lanka perhaps. I don't know what fundamental changes they are making or will be making to the structure of Sri Lankan economy. Otherwise, Sri Lanka has always been ruled by 2 or 3 families. And how much of a power of their power has been reduced or cut, we don't know. So, in Pakistan, we've overthrew Ayub Khan, we overthrew Musharraf through mass protests, and we found we were still there where we began. No change. So I think this whole Gen Z thing in its revolt is overrated. It is overrated because change never comes by mobs on the street. We are seeing this in Iran also. We are going to see this in Iran. Already the protest has begun to die out, and it will die out, and the Ayatollahs will continue to rule. You need to have an organized resistance. Until and unless there is organized resistance, you cannot sustain your movement and bring about the changes that you want to bring about the change. The point about organized movement is you have to organize around an ideology. You cannot organize around, we are going to give BISP to the people. Nobody is. It's a good thing. And I know it's a good thing, and I'm biased towards it because I designed it. But I used to tell the People's Party when the election was coming, they were saying, don't count on BISP. You are not going to get votes because of BISP, and they did not actually lose the election. So you can't give people a list of a manifesto which will give you A, B, C, D. You're going to give you electric buses, and we're going to, give you 6 million houses. No, all that is very instrumental. You need people are mobilized through ideology, and the only ideology that exists today is the Islamic radical ideology. The Taliban are the only people in Pakistan also. The only people who can really mobilize is the Taliban. We need a social democratic agenda. We need a social democratic revolution. We need to speak in terms of socialism, because that is the only counter that we can give, an only rational, enlightened agenda that we can give. Neoliberalism is dead, and no amount of manifesto or a very good economic development agenda is going to get you anywhere. And we've seen that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser Bengali. May you live in interesting times is a Chinese proverb. May you live in interesting times. And with respect to Cuba, Cuba is just that tiny country, very near the mainland of the United States of America, which has been under sanctions for 60 years, headed or liberated, let us say, by Fidel Castro and his charismatic second-in-command, Che Guevara. Che Guevara, a hero to many radicals and leftists throughout the world. You can see his posters everywhere. But the interesting thing is that the United States of America did everything possible to kill Fidel Castro. To kill him in many ways. By poisoning him, but he didn't die. By drowning him, but he didn't drown. A few other methods which they employed in order to get rid of him. but he didn't die. And even today, although Cuba is just a small little place and has been under sanctions for 60 years, it is still holding its sovereignty. And I think when Trump talked about Cuba, they issued a very strong nationalistic statement about their own sovereignty. And of course, I agree entirely with Dr. Kaiser Bengali that in order to bring change, you have to have an ideologically oriented political party. And that change does not come, structural change does not come through mobs on the street. It is my immense pleasure to invite Air Vice Marshal Dr. Muhammad Abid Rao to address us. He is a member of the research faculty of the PAF Air War College, and he will speak on war, deterrence, and escalation in the world. Rao Saab, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm honored sitting on this platform. I will start with the two verses of Allama Iqbal, which he said about 110 years ago. First one is, and these two verses will encompass the entire art of war, survival of nations, and your ability to stand against any aggressor. आज तुझको बताऊं मैं तकदीर उमम क्या है, शमशीर व सना अव्वल, ताउस व रुबाब आखिर. This will apply to the Middle Eastern crisis since 1948. Why Israel being so small continues to, threaten all Arabs put together. The second one is, तकदीर के काजी का ये फतवा है अज़ल से, है जुर्म ज़ईफ़ी की सज़ा मर्ग मफाजात. That this is already an established fact by God that if you are weak, you are destined to die. So, again, it relates to the survival of nations in war. Now, I will just in a few lines state what is war. War is a process in which one party imposes its will on the other. Want to dominate by sheer force, by sheer threat, or in other words, it is continuation of foreign policy by other means. It's a coin with both faces of the same coin. Now, on war strategies, there is nothing new from before Christ era. Chanakya had stated the war rules, foreign policy formulation and its implementation. Sun Tzu had written the military strategy. And so war is something as old as the human beings are. The only thing that has changed is the methodology, the type of weapons, the type of, particularly in last 100 years. 100 years, I will specify further. What is the basic cause? Why do nations go to war? Primarily, being a student of history, I believe that constantly there has been an element ever present, that is uneven distribution of everything on the surface of Earth. This is by design. The design of the distribution of assets, wealth, power, and personalities. They contribute all and they promote wars. If God had made everything even, there would have been no difference of opinions, no fight for somebody else's rights. So war, I would say, is very natural to human nature, and human psyche has been designed by God in that particular manner. This promotes conflicts, and conflicts then develop into war, and war then everybody, according to his own abilities, fights. Now, types of war, if you say, I will again refer back to say after end of First World War, that was 1919, there was no Air Force. And then the Second World War saw the Air Force coming up. Air Force coming up in the theater of war changed the entire spectrum, because you had more firepower, you had greater reach, you had greater distances to cover, and survivability. Earlier days, the wars were fought on the borders, and the common citizen never knew about it. But the Air Force brought the war to your doorstep. So this was a big change. Then, if you look at the Air Force, the development that has taken place is last 100. The first flight was in 1903, and that lasted for 40 seconds only. So from that, see what our aircraft are capable today. And you will see that no other sphere of life has traveled with this speed and this quantum like the Air Force. The tanks at that time used to run 20 miles an hour. Today they run 50 miles an hour. That's it. Nothing more than that. Similarly, the guns have, So the armed conflict that was restricted between the two armies has now become a national event. There is armed conflict, conventional weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, and another event that is not much known here is deforestation. This was done extensively by the American Air Force in Vietnam in 60s, because to deny the hideouts to the guerrilla fighters. Then war is fought by the proxies. We have seen a lot of proxy wars, and that another form of that is the terrorism that a lot of countries claim that they're fighting proxy wars. They have no dispute between the two mother nations. Land disputes. Pakistan, India wars have always been on Kashmir issue. It's a land dispute. So they have had. Then there are political issues. Now, North Korea, South Korea, their wars, particularly in 51, was based on this issue. 1905, just to recollect, Japan had completed their Meiji Revolution in the year 1900. Whatever they had planned for 50 years program, they achieved in 32 years. Then their armies, their generals requested for lands. The emperor said that there are no lands in Japan to be given to the army generals. If you want lands, conquer territories. So even Korea was attacked and taken over. So between 1905 to 1945, Korea was under Japanese occupation. And after Second World War ended, there was a division between North and South. I don't want to go into details. And the 38th parallel between the two Koreas has actually not only divided the nation, but also politically at global level has been divided. Then there are ethnic and religious wars. What we saw in 90s in Kosovo and Serbia was an ethnic and religious based war. Then a very important factor in which we have had the Second World War is the ego factor of the leaders. If you recall, the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 was signed by all allies against Germany. They had to pay the war damages, they had to commit their future incomes from their mines and industries, and that gave rise to a person like Hitler in 1934, who decided to avenge this national disgrace, and he prepared for war, and in 1939 he launched his. It was purely based on his ego. Otherwise, there was no reason for, there was no negotiation, there was no attempt by Germany to get these terms little relaxed, but it went on. Then there is guerrilla warfare, the economic factors. In America today, their economy is largely based on sale of weapons, aircraft, and what you call the war economy. It is very important for American economy to have a war at any given time in different parts of the world. If you see from 1945, America came in and settled in Europe in the Pacific region, Until today, they have not vacated those bases, be it UK, Belgium, Holland, Germany. France is the only country there which did not allow, even then, the Americans to make a base there. If you see the Pacific from Japan to Philippines to Thailand and so many other islands, you will find American bases, and they're still there, and now they're using. They had missed out the Middle Eastern side. So in 1990, America prompted Iraq to take over Kuwait. August 19, Kuwait was taken over. That gave America an excuse to have the first Gulf War. So they attacked, destroyed Iraq, and made bases there. Today they have a base in Oman, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and so many. Iraq is totally wiped out. Syria is wiped out totally. And a point to that, to the learned audience, I'll take you back to 1973, Arab-Israel War. When the war ended, there were moments in that October war when Israel would have collapsed had the Americans not warned them about the Egyptian Fourth Army encircling them in Sinai using their SR-71s and other satellite imageries. Israel would have been wiped out. Israel and America then formulated a policy that any country who has the potential to threaten Israel, who has the capability to threaten Israel, should be neutralized. First of that country was Egypt. Camp David was signed in 1978, after which we came back and Egypt was promised $5 billion per year, which they are receiving till today as aid. When Sadat came to Egypt, he was extensively criticized by his people. He was also invited to Tel Aviv to address Israeli parliament. And when he came back from Israel, he made one statement. He says, I can fight Israel, I cannot fight America. So that explained the whole thing. So, and in that, he lost his life in 1981. He was killed by his own soldiers. Next comes Iran. This revolution that came in 79 was also unacceptable to the Arabs around because their monarchies were being threatened. So they got all these Arab countries together and they attacked Iran in September 1980. They wanted Iran to fail right then, and this war continued for 8 years. And during this time, in 81, they attacked Iraqi nuclear plant because they also didn't want that Iraq should have a nuclear weapon. That was done. Then today, if you look at the map around this area, any country in which Pakistan and Iran also come in the outer periphery, which Israel considers as a threat to them. So at any given time, we will remain under that pressure to be incapable of reaching Israel or having those weapons which may threaten Israel. Okay. So in development of the air forces, you have seen in last 1 year the kind of guns, the rockets, the precision weapons in laser-guided ammunition, range extended kits, that a bomb launched, conventional bomb launched at 30,000 can travel 100 kilometers into enemy territory, surface missiles, nuclear, and today even your space is militarized. That is being used. On the lighter side, let me tell you, there was this weather warfare that Americans are pursuing. What is weather warfare? In 1973, Russia had a dry season in Tashkent area, and their grapes were drying out and dying. So there was a threat to the entire crop. So they tried artificial rain by spreading super concentrated nitric acid over the clouds where the humidity was 100%. So the downpour came and they saved the crop in a big region. So from there, CIA picked up that if this can be done for peace, it can also be done for war. So Weather for Warfare project was launched, in which they said, if you dry out certain region, you can kill the crops, which will fail the economy. If you cause explosions in coastal cities and cause earthquakes, that will do that. And they have done this experiment in China. 77, they spoiled the crop wheat after Mao Zedong's death, and China suddenly announced shortage of wheat. And I'll explain if somebody has a query in that. The last factor in that is still under research and development, that if they can reverse the flow of a river, that will kill the economy of that country forever. And they have on agenda to do that for Yangtze River. Because the motive behind that was that to make a nation surrender without getting any American soldier killed. So if that works, then would have done that. And one peaceful experiment, again, I have personally seen that 81 March, it was done in UAE, when they caused this artificial rain, and it was so, the downpour was so heavy that the Dubai city was not geared up for the drainage. So the city got flooded. And then, of course, the sewerage and things have been rebuilt. Okay. On this 2025 particularly, Dr. Saiba has mentioned about Gaza, about Ukraine and Indo-Pak. You see, in case of Pakistan, India, it was only land dispute. But now with Modi coming there, ego has also come in. They cannot tolerate a strong Pakistan which does not listen to them, or so many other demands that they have on us. The result somehow was unexpected for everybody. I have been attached to 7, 8 of their Indian channels, and all the times whenever they would run out of argument, they would say, remember 71 war? And I would always say that no previous war can predict the future war. 71 was a very different situation. We were in a very adverse situation, and no country in our place could have won that war. So in that arrogance, they tried to attack, and they were surprised. Losing 7 aircraft plus 1 Heron UAV in 4 hours of time frame was unacceptable. For the next 10 days, they grounded their air force. You can imagine the loss of 7 aircraft caused grounding of 1,000 aeroplanes and moving them at least 300 kilometers back. Today, at this forum, I can tell you, India is in no position to wage war against Pakistan because they have a very weak air force. They have grounded 450 MiG-21s without a replacement. Their Teja program is not so successful. And with the remaining force, they cannot think of attacking Pakistan. They'll keep threatening. That's a political statement. Modi needs that. And the other thing on Pakistan-India relations, I would say that earlier, whenever we had wars, like 65 war, I can tell you it was a very friendly war. We did not target their economic places. We did not target civil population. And during the war, there were a lot of goodwill exchanges. We shot down one of their pilots, Flight Lieutenant Kiriappa. His father was a serving general in the Indian Army. And President Ayub offered to him that he's your son, we can release him. That guy said, no, release him only when other POWs come back. That communication. And soon after the war was over, in less than 3 months' time, Indian Air Chief flew into his Fokker all the way up to Peshawar and stayed overnight there. And then he said, I want to visit Sargodha. So he was taken to Sargodha. Now, 2 adversaries who have fought a war. I mean, American and Japan can't do that. American and Germany can't do that. But India, Pakistan did that. So he was taken to Sargodha, and it was a very nice sight that one car having 4 stars on that, or 5 because of Ayub Khan, had 2 flags on it and driving on Sargodha base. And he took all his POWs in his own aircraft. So what I'm saying is that was a friendly war. And there were other also incidents, which led that it was just one of those wars miscalculated by Pakistan. We went to war, we miscalculated what will happen, and it was a stalemate. Both sides did not win, or you can say both sides lost. because they did not achieve their objectives, we did not achieve liberation of Kashmir. So, Ukraine war will not end till America wants it to end. They want Russia to keep leading, so it will continue. We have had tremendous losses in that, in human lives, in losses to the national assets, and will continue. Because, as I said earlier, it is in human nature to hurt the adversary. Now, coming back to deterrence, all it says is that if you want peace, prepare for war. Be strong so that an aggressor doesn't do it. In India, from 1984 till 1996, that I know, they used to hold a seminar with the military people and with civilian intelligentsia, and the only topic used to be how to neutralize Pakistan. And at the end, the conclusion every year was that yes, we can neutralize Pakistan, but it will cost India so much. 250 fighter aircraft, so much of economic loss, so many naval assets, so many soldiers. They would say, let's keep, because Pakistan kept raising the cost of war to India. So that is one deterrence. If you keep doing that, 98, the nuclear explosion gave us that strength. In this 25 incident in May, gave us the confidence that without threatening nuclear exchange, we can tackle India. And they will not do that. And that is a psychological impact also on India. And it was a surprise to, but then again in history of warfare, being big is not good enough to win you a war. In history, you have numerous wars which are won by smaller nations. Israel is one example. Pakistan is one example that we have not lost to India. So that is the best guarantee to your deterrence. So, escalation again will depend on your stamina. I mean, the Gulf World Wars went for 6 years. Japan had to resort to guerrilla warfare against America till they were nuked. Germany had to surrender. Their mistakes and their miscalculations and all that. So I will now come to an end and leave anything for questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rao Saab. That was very interesting. It is our national psyche. We keep referring to the 1971 war. We keep referring to it. It comes back again and again into our conscious and subconscious. And I remember listening to an interview by Field Marshal Sam Mannix, in which he said that in 1971, in what is now Bangladesh, was then East Pakistan, he said that the Pakistan army fought very valiantly. And he said that they didn't have a chance because they were 1,000 miles away from their base. That has stuck in my mind. He said they fought very gallantly. But I don't know, you might agree that the ultimate deterrence is the nuclear deterrence. That is the ultimate deterrence. And that it is not easy to attack a country which has nuclear power, which is a nuclear power. I will now open the floor to questions and answers.
Thank you for most enlightening session here. I have very quick questions for all the three eminent personalities. I will start with Rao Saab. Have we even considered the new technologies of AI and coupled with biological warfare? I feel that the nuclear warfare is now outdated because it is understood that if any region goes into a nuclear conflict, it will inevitably impact the whole world in various forms. My next question is to Dr. Zaidi Saab, is it about economics or is it about governance? और Kaiser Bengali साहब से मेरी गुजारिश होगी कि वो okay, so what is the advice to Gen Z? What kind of an ideological underpinning should the Gen Z, as we call it, the next generation, I mean, we can label it anything, where should we anchor? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. You see, chemical and biological warfare are actually banned by a particular Geneva Convention. However, there is nothing as total stoppage or non-usage of that. In the this war between Iran and Iraq, Iraqis have used that on suggestions of the godfathers they had behind them, and it was not reported. A nuclear weapon, I believe you cannot rule out. It's your last, choice weapon, and depends on the leaders. You see, I wouldn't hesitate to say that there have been peace-loving prime ministers in India. Nehru was one, Vajpayee was another, but this man is not. And so leaders decide a lot of things, and subsequently their analyses are different. I was posted in France and I had a German colleague. So after I made friends with him, one day I asked him, what do you people think of Hitler? And I'm talking about 1989, 90 time frame. He suddenly looked shocked and he said, why are you asking about Hitler? I said, no, because in Pakistan, there is some good reference to Hitler also. He was a great nationalist because he wanted to avenge his disgrace of Treaty of Versailles. So after thinking a bit, he said, his place is that he has brought shame to such a great nation. So therefore, we don't respect him. He says the Western Hollywood and, the other countries, England, they make fun of Germans making Second World War movies. We are not as stupid as shown in these Western movies. So use of nuclear power will depend about on the leaders of the two adversaries. Who goes berserk first? Pakistan also has a non-stated, thing that if there is a threat to the existence of your nation, if your country is being divided somewhere in between, or the existence of Pakistan per se is being threatened, and our nuclear weapon is India specific only. India specific, and Indians know that. And we are blamed of Islamic bomb that will go into the hands of some of those countries. That will not happen. But I will restrict it to that. All these things are banned, but a situation will come when the leaders will be forced to.
There's also the case of Agent Orange in Vietnam, where chemical weapons were deployed by the United States. So I don't like the word governance, I call it political economy. So economics and political economy go together. Who controls the resources? Who decides where land is held? Who decides what land is public and private? Which airline is going to be sold? And who's going to be part of it? So I think they're all very closely linked, especially in a country like Pakistan. But I'm not talking about Pakistan. I'm talking about other countries where political economy, where different institutions, when you have an institution, and I'm not talking about Pakistan, where you have institutions which are extremely powerful and they are unelected and they determine who gets elected and who runs your country, I think it's very easy to decide who also runs your economy. There's a very close relationship with that, and that also has an impact on foreign relations. So, that you can't choose between two brothers who are fighting, which has happened to UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and happens almost every week. So they're very closely linked, and unless we fix our political economy, our economy will continue to do as well as.
I'm a teacher. 40 years in teaching, and in the last 20 years, I've been teaching in private universities. I lecture at Karachi University also, but formal teaching is in private universities. And I come across this, what you can call Gen Z. Their knowledge is peripheral. They think going through the ticker on their phone gives them all the knowledge. I mean, I think they really don't know what's happening. They don't read. They don't read anything. They just want to skim the screen. They have very little understanding of the world, and I'm saying this very responsibly. 2018 elections होने वाले थे. I had this class of 16 students, master students. So I asked, are you going to vote? Everybody said yes. I said, who are you going to vote for? He said, except for one, 15 said PTI. In fact, they didn't say PTI, they said Imran Khan. So I said, okay, let's have a discussion. It's a university, they have an opinion, let's have a discussion. So I asked, why Imran Khan? And their answer was, nobody has done anything for the country. So I asked them, okay, how many of you have heard of Tarbela Dam, Mangla Dam? And let me tell you, half of them had not heard of it. They weren't really, they were vaguely aware, but they were not really aware. So I told them what it was and how it was. And I said, okay, who initiated this? They have no idea. And I asked about a few other things about the country, major infrastructure achievements. They had no idea. Then I said, okay. And I, of course, told them this was done by Ayub Khan, this was done by Bhutto, this was done by Benazir, etc., etc. And they were blank. They had no idea about what was happening in the country or about anything. And at the end of it, I asked them, okay, now let me ask, who are you going to vote for? Imran Khan. You know. So and this is just one class as an example, but I've come across my friends' children, when you talk to them, it's very, they can only talk on the periphery. They have no real understanding of processes, social processes, why some people or a nation or a society behaves in a certain way, what is the history behind their actions today. There is nothing. So I really have very little respect for Gen Z. I grew up reading a lot. By the time I had joined the university after doing my intermediate, I had read the whole Quran. I had read Mao's 3 volumes. I had read Marx's books. I had read American history. My teachers didn't ask me. Now, if you tell students to read something, you prescribe a textbook, they will say, is it on the net? You know, they don't want to touch books. And net will not give you that understanding. You know, it's fleeting. Everything is fleeting. You can pass, swing with you. So that's my personal experience. I know there are others who can think differently, and I would respect them. But that's my opinion. I have not, very few. There are people. There are young people in their 20s also I've come across who have a thinking mind and they've read and they really can have a good discussion. But the bulk of them are all fleeting, and everybody wants to leave Pakistan. I mean, that's their only objective. They don't care what happens here, what is happening. These are not issues they want to discuss.
My question, last year a very strange decision was taken. Field Marshal, while his visit to US, he committed that Pasni level base will be given to the US. They never had a debate in the parliament, or they never got people of Pakistan, consent of people of Pakistan Pakistan. And after returning to Pakistan, they very quickly 26 and 27 amendment. So nobody can challenge their decisions, and they know that that was a very bad decision. So now nobody can challenge, and they have the lifelong immunity. So many people. So they should have taken they should have debate in the parliament. The people of Pakistan even don't know at what cost Muslim peace was given to the US. And in future, if there will be any attack, that will be considered as an attack from the Pakistani soil, the people of the Pakistani side. So, do you think that was a good decision? What's up?
मुझे ऐसी चीजें नहीं पता आप बताइए
Again, first thing, it's not a good decision. Now move ahead. Go back to 1950s. आपने पहली दफा अमेरिका को बेस दी बटाबेर की पेशावर की आपने कैंटोनमेंट दी खारियां की खारियां कैंटोनमेंट was built up by them and they were there till the U-2 spy plane getting airborne from Peshawar got shot down over Russia and उसकी वजह जो भी थी somebody said कि उसको altimeter temper कर दिया था because it was supposed to fly above 65,000 because the Russians then had weapons up to 65,000 and this altimeter when it was disturbed gave a wrong information to the pilots. He was flying at a lower altitude, indication higher की थी and he got shot down. उस वक्त ख्रुश्चेव ने रेड सर्कल लगाया था पेशावर के खिलाफ कि हमारे जो न्यूक्लियर टारगेट्स हैं उसमें ये भी जाएगा. अच्छा उसके बाद खैर when Zulfikar Ali Bhutto became the foreign minister and his entire leaning was towards China. So we were asked to give some aid to the American soldiers. कि चाहे आप टेबल टेनिस दे दें, आप नर्सेज दे दें, आप डॉक्टर्स दे दें, but give some contribution because they were members of NATO because of East Pakistan. We refused. We came under sanctions. And we came under sanctions at that time when we were their best allies group में थे. Then we fought the war in sanctions. 65 के बाद war ज़्यादा सख्त हुई. And to knowledge of you people, I can tell we had this American aircraft coming here in Pakistan with the proviso that they will not be used against India. They were only to be used against China. And till we received our F-16s, ये था. अब I'm told, I'm out of Air Force for the last 20 years. I don't know अभी क्या situation है. जब खैर over a period of time, then Ziaul became their darling because ये अफगान crisis था. फिर उसके बाद खत्म होते ही उसके we came under ये Pressler Amendment nuclear program के उस पे हमारे F-16s के we had paid $658 million for 72 F-16s. उन्होंने पैसे रख दिए and they said aircraft हमने पार्किंग के भी चार्जेस दिए because जो बन गए थे 28 जहाज वो पार्क हुए हुए थे. Then they were sold to probably New Zealand or what. So we lost that money. You got soybean and wheat like that. Comes 9/11, we become again their darling. They want a base here. So President Musharraf, उस वक्त I was in service, and I was commanding a southern AOC था मैं. I had Balochistan and Sindh all bases. So we gave, as per the government decision, Jacobabad and Basni. Basni was not an operating base; it was a recovery base. कि कोई emergency हो जाए जहाज में, you can land there. But Jacobabad was a proper operating base. अच्छा उसके बाद भी जो है ना मतलब when this used drones against us, Salala incident हुआ, we said nothing to it. We cancelled that. अब क्या situation है मुझे नहीं पता, because उनको पार्लियामेंट सूट नहीं करती. पार्लियामेंट में डिबेट जाएगी तो कोई दीवाने लोग होंगे नहीं पे नहीं, चाहे उनको वजह मालूम हो या ना हो, वो करते हैं. पर हियर अगर वो एक आदमी से डील कर रहे हैं तो आई डोंट नो द डिटेल्स के मसली दी है उनको अमेरिकन को या नहीं दी है. आपकी वल्नरेबिलिटी 57 मतलब 47 से है बिकॉज उस वक्त आपको आपका शेयर नहीं मिला डिफेंस वेपन्स का, एयरफोर्स का बिल्कुल नहीं मिला. हमें जो जहाज मिले उनके फ्यूल टैंक में दे मिक्स्ड शुगर अपने वो डब्बे डाल दिए थे, वो आधे रास्ते में दे फ्लेम्ड आउट, अम्बाला से आने वाले, जोधपुर से आने वाले थे, लैंडेड इन डेजर्ट्स एंड फील्ड्स, वी डिडंट गेट। धमकियां में रोज वल्लभ भाई पटेल दिया करता था, नेहरू नेवर डिड दैट, बट वल्लभ भाई पटेल के पाकिस्तान आ जाएगा हमारे पास, 1 महीने की देर है, तो वी हैड टू गेट दिस थिंग बैक, बोरो स्टील वाला जो था। तो इस वीकनेस को भी आप याद रखिए। वो कहते हैं ना, गैरत है बड़ी चीज जहाने तक होता हूँ, पहनाती है दरवेश को ताजे सिरे दारा, लेकिन यू हैव टू अफोर्ड गैरत। अगर आप अफोर्ड ना कर सकें, यू कैन नॉट मेंटेन गैरत या व्हाटएवर नोबल पोस्ट यू वांट टू अडॉप्ट।
वैसे हमने सुना है, पता नहीं सही है या गलत, हमने अभी सुना है कि वो पर्ची तो दिया तो नहीं।
आई एम नॉट अवेयर ऑफ दैट।
हमें
वो
नहीं
तो
पता।
हमारा कोई नहीं है, अभी नहीं है।
And I think we again have to be very, very careful about rumors that go around and we treat them as fact and then start talking about it. I think facts को ले और उस पर फिर अपना opinion.
Dr. Janetson.
Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Kaiser Bengali, I wanted to ask a very specifically. I have also a similar experience with the Gen Z. I have 2 grandsons who live with me, and I also interact with others. Unfortunately, not been teaching for some time. मुझे ये फरमाइए, और मैं आपसे भी और डॉक्टर अकबर ज़ैदी से भी ये सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ कि आप, ये बच्चे भी तो बड़े हो रहे हैं ना, and they are going to eventually come into from lower to middle to top management positions. What scenario do you see, and how do we tackle that? Thank you. I hope I.
I don't know. I think probably a psychologist can answer that question. कि कैसे करेंगे? कर तो लेंगे, ये बात नहीं है. They will. I think human ingenuity. You do learn on the job also. You find a way out. You figure out कि ये कैसे करना है. तो ऐसा नहीं होगा कि Gen Z being a CEO 20 years from now is going to fail and his company is going to collapse. No, I don't think that is going to happen. That scenario is not there. But it's going to be an uphill task and we will manage it. I force them to read. ये जब देता हूँ कि असाइनमेंट मुझे पता है कि ये ChatGPT से कॉपी करके लाए हैं. So everyone I ask to come on the rostrum, and then I say, okay, this is the line you have used, explain it. But अगर उन्होंने सिर्फ कॉपी किया है तो explain नहीं कर सकते हैं. So once they know that I'm going to do this, so they take the trouble of not just copying but also reading. And I think, so what has happened is that the teaching methodology has changed, and I think teachers का काम बढ़ गया है, because now I have to read everything they write and then mark out कि अच्छा सवाल मुझे कहाँ पूछना है. So I think as technology develops, our teaching methods, our teaching responsibility also changes. And I think जो students को अगर आप उस rigor से गुजारे तो they'll turn out to be better leaders compared to others जो सिर्फ रट्टे लगा के पास होके निकल के आ गए हैं. I think our education system has to adapt to the technology and the challenge of technology, and I think it can be done. I think it can do it.
My question has to be respectable that the rare earth minerals is the economic stability for Pakistan, or it is going to be liability in the mind frame of President Trump.
बता दूं कि हमने बहुत सारे पिछले 10 साल में, शायद 10 साल से भी ज़्यादा मफरूज़ों पे हैं. पहले आया सीपेक, गेम चेंजर होगा, then it died out, fizzled out, and now it's not even talked about. फिर SIFC, ग्रीन पाकिस्तान, उड़ान पाकिस्तान, ये हम हर कुछ की लाइफ 2-3 साल होती है, कुछ की 2-3 हफ्ते होती है, लेकिन वो ऐसे ही हम चला रहे हैं। तो ये मिनरल का भी ऐसा ही है, जहाँ ये सारे मिनरल्स हैं, पर्टिकुलरली बलूचिस्तान में है, ऐसा नहीं है कि आप एक टीम मजदूरों की भेजें बेलचे लेकर वो मिनरल लेके आ जाएंगे। These minerals require massive capital investment, जो पाकिस्तान के पास नहीं है। अगर कोई और आके भी करता है तो उसको 5 से 10 साल लगेंगे उसको सेटअप करने में और एक्सट्रैक्ट करने में। सिर्फ ये नहीं है कि जहाँ पर कोई मिनरल है वहीं पर करना है, वहाँ आपको सड़क भी ले जानी है। सड़क तो बना देंगे, वहाँ पानी भी नहीं है, पानी कैसे ले जाएंगे? अगर आपने पानी चढ़ाना है, ऊपर पंप करना है, so it's going to be very expensive. Will that mineral still be economically viable or not? I think these are a range of questions that arise and none of them are being addressed. सिर्फ नारेबाजी है, तो हमें फिक्र करने की जरूरत नहीं है। Rare earth is safe.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. This is Fraz Koreju, member of this institute. I have question from Honorable Dr. Kaiser Bengali. Other valued panelists, they can also answer. You talked about Gen Z, organized ideology, and sensible leadership. Let me take you towards the election of Zoran Mamdani. Do you agree or think that this is a viable and genuine change or the beginning of change in American system? Thank you.
Okay, ये न्यूयॉर्क is largely an immigrant city, so I think his agenda paid off there. Of course, a lot of the non-immigrants also voted for him. He got 50% plus votes. We have to see whether that translates into the rest of America, and we also see how successful he is on his agenda. If he is not successful, it will be very harmful for the ideology that he proposes. He has to deliver on transport and rent and जो उसका agenda है, basic जो affordability का वो deliver करना। बहुत सारी leftist governments आई है दुनिया में और वो deliver नहीं कर पाई, economy को wreck करके चले गए। I think ये हमारी कमजोरी है ये। So let's see what happens. हमारी दुआएं तो उनके साथ रहेंगी।
I'm now going to wrap up this session, from which I personally have learned a great deal. And I'm sure that the audience has also benefited from it. So I want to thank Dr. Akbar Zaidi, Dr. Kaiser Bengali, and Air Vice Marshal Abid. Thank you for your presence and thank you for making this session so interesting. And I would invite everybody to join us for a cup of tea.
Thank you, Hasan.